This recipe is a Butterfinger cocoa bar cookie recipe. Ingredients are 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 sticks of softened butter, a cup of brown sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla, 2 eggs, and chocolate chip. I changed to 3 tablespoons of the ground Butterfinger bits and 2 heaping tablespoons of the Nestle hot cocoa. So my husband was coming home with company and I said I would make chocolate chip cookies. But when I went to make them, I realized somebody had gotten into the chocolate chips and there was only about a third, maybe even less than a third of a bag of the chips. Well, I didn't have any candy in the house, and I was supposed to make cookies. So I looked in the pantry, and I found Nestle used to make a Butterfinger flavored hot chocolate. So I used 2 packets of that in the recipe, and I backed up on the sugar a little bit. Now, I wrote to Nestle a few years ago. They don't make that hot chocolate anymore. So that's why I'm going to take the bits, the Butterfinger bits, grind them up, and try to replicate that recipe because it was a good recipe and it was a great memory. In addition to grinding the bits, I'm going to also use the Tollhouse Nestle hot cocoa to try to get as close to that recipe and the consistency and the taste that I can. Nestle is not a sponsor of this recipe. Okay, so I ground up and used 3 tablespoons of the bits. Now, after I taste it, I'm going to add 4 tablespoons to the recipe. I think that's going to give the flavor that I want to this recipe. I also added 2 heaping tablespoons of the Nestle Tollhouse hot cocoa mix. I reduced the sugar because the original recipe, the hot cocoa, had sugar in it, and there's also sugar in those bits, and I'm grinding it, so I did back up the sugar a little bit. Unfortunately, I mistakenly threw the sugar in with the dry ingredients. I think that's going to make the batter a little drier. I wouldn't recommend it. And remember, these are made with Butterfinger bits, and that has peanut butter in it. This recipe is not for those allergic to nuts. Now I'm going to mix the dry and the wet ingredients to form a dough. The wet ingredients were the 2 sticks of softened butter and the sugar mixed well, and then the 2 eggs and the vanilla. Okay, all that's left is to stir in that 1/4 of the bag of chips, and we'll see how this is going to taste. I added a 1/2 cup of the chocolate chips, but it didn't seem like enough from the original recipe, so I added an additional 1/8 of a cup. So this is what the dough looks like before I put it into the pan. So the recipe recap is 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 sticks of softened butter, 1 cup of packed brown sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla, 2 eggs, 4 tablespoons of the ground Butterfinger bits, and 2 heaping tablespoons of the Nestle Tollhouse cocoa mix. And the milk chocolate chips, I did a 1/2 cup and then 1/8 of a cup, because I didn't think that a 1/2 cup looked like enough from the original recipe. Now, the bar cookie recipe called for a jelly roll pan, and I did try to do that, but I switched it to my enamel-coated cast iron baking dish, and it's 8 by 13, and the dough fit perfectly, and I thought was going to make a better cookie. The jelly roll pan, the cookie was going to be super, super thin. So into a 375-degree oven, and it calls for 20 to 25 minutes, but we'll see how it goes. As I always say, everybody's oven's different and their elevation may be different. These came out in 20 minutes and I did test them and they are done. So in my oven, in this pan, they cooked in 20 minutes. Now they smell amazing. Now I have to taste them. Now I tasted them and they are very close to the original. So I'm happy with the way they came out, but I shouldn't have thrown the sugar in with the dry ingredients because they were slightly drier than the original. I think adding that extra tablespoon of the ground bits the next time will make it very, very close to the original. So thank you for spending the time with me, recreating this memory, because that's what food is all about. Memories with family and friends. I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and remember, it's not for those who are allergic to nuts. So thank you again for visiting Ginger's Kitchen. I hope you enjoyed your time with me. I hope you come back. I hope you subscribe. And until next time.